Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. I'd like to welcome you, but before you get your official welcome, I want to introduce our fearless leader, Dean Hussey Cohen.
Thank you, David, and all of your wonderful staff who put together this great luncheon. And thank you all for coming today. So we brought back this luncheon a couple of years ago due to popular demand. And it's great to see how it's been growing, just like everything else in the school. And some of you haven't been back at campus for a while, so there have been some significant development, both in the university and especially in our school, that I'd like to go over. Most importantly, we've been expanding our faculty quite significantly. We've hired multiple tenure and tenure-track professors, including a woman who arrived just this summer, Mireille Jacobson, a gentleman we recruited from UPenn, Mark Vermest, Berenice Benayoun that we recruited from Stanford, and Reginald Tucker Seeley from Harvard, who was recently installed as the inaugural Ed Schneider Chair holder. We also recruited several new research and teaching professors. Over the last years, we've been fortunate to have Sebastian Brandhorst, Paul Nash, and M. Arpawang join our ranks in various capacities. And these great new teachers and professors have the responsibility of teaching our students, who've also grown enormously. In fact, we tripled our student body over the last 6 years. And we now have over 550 gerontology students enrolled in the school, which I think is fantastic. And to support all of this, we have surpassed our $50 million original campaign goal. And I want to salute David for that. And it's really wonderful donor, particularly Mei-Li Ney, who's right here, that we are so grateful to, as well as the Davis family, who've been steadfast supporters of the school. And many of you here today, we're really, really grateful. This year, we had a record-breaking increase in our funding from the NIH, which has essentially doubled over the last 5 years to $16 million a year of federal funding, which is also a remarkable achievement, larger than many of the other schools and departments in the university. We did some important activities that I'd like to mention, including hosting a special state assembly hearing where the California Task Force on Family Caregiving delivered a final report recommendation that included support for better services and supporting family caregivers. This was led by Professor Kate Wilbur, who led that team, and Professor Donna Benton, who chaired the task force. We also hosted the largest ever Morton Keston Summit a few weeks ago, with over 250 people who came to hear about transforming homes and communities to support healthy aging and showcasing the competitive Morton Keston Universal Design Competition. It was a fabulous event held not too far from here, and again, demonstrating the growth and the impact of the school. In addition, we are now undergoing the largest remodeling in the history of the school. Those of you who had a chance to stop by the building know that it's not the perfect time to go take a look because there's all these construction workers, but in a few months, please stop by and see what a beautiful lobby and the second floor are going to look like. We're really looking forward. And all of these things are a result of your philanthropic support, which is the backbone for the only freestanding, the only school of gerontology in the world, the USC Leonard Davis School. And many of you know that over half of our student body receives scholarship support and are able to take advantage of this highly personalized and unique experience in our world-class institution. And in fact, in this year alone, due to support from benefactors like yourselves, we plan to distribute $1 million in scholarship support for our students. So thank you for that. And these students are some of the most remarkable, wonderful individuals at USC. They're compassionate, they're extraordinary. You're going to hear from one exemplary student today. And they come here to apply their interests and passions and goals to create unique careers, the careers of the future, and lead the dreams of service, leadership, and scientific discovery. As gerontologists and as future gerontologists, the entire lifespan is our work. And not very many people in professions can claim that. Our studies and our research focus on understanding longevity and healthy aging, helping families, and creating revolutionary adaptive technologies and novel interventions for diseases of aging. All of these result in helping improving the quality of life for older adults and human beings around the globe, and extending lifespan and particularly health span. And that's a great mission to have. And as I always do, I'm going to list the scholarships that have been created over the last few years as a result of your help. The list this year is the longest ever. And I'm going to mention all of the programs that have supported students, including the Kevin Shu Chair in Gerontology, which is held by Professor George Shannon, who spoke to us a couple of years ago. The Ed Schneider Chair in Gerontology, held by Professor Reggie Tucker-Seeley. The Rongxian Chu Laboratory. The Rankin Family Scholarship, with a generous gift from the ASNF Foundation. And thank you, Keith, for making that happen for us. We really appreciate that and everything else you've done for the school. The Richard A. Liebef Scholarship. The Doctors Phyllis and Joseph Meltzer Scholarship. The Donna and Grant Hishima Scholarship, the David Peterson Scholarship, and probably the most important one in my lifetime at this school, the Mei Lee Ney Scholarship, which is part of the Ney Center for Healthspan Science. Thank you again, Mei Lee, for making that happen. They are in random order, obviously. The Arthur A. and Beth White Scholarship with support from the Orange Catholic Foundation, and we have several board members, Jacqueline Dupont and Tony Jennison, who are here today. Thank you. The Victor Rainier Scholarship, and thank you, Victor, for that and for all of your support over the many years, even before I got here. The Navigate Foundation, which has given a really generous research scholarship, a research grant that supports several labs in our school. And Dwayne McClellan is here. Thank you. Dwayne is our graduate who remembered us and came back to support the important endeavors that we're doing. So thanks everybody here for everything that you do for us, for the school, for the university, and for the field. And at this point, I'd like to call to the podium my friend and colleague, Vice Dean, Sir Kelvin Davies. And Vice Dean Davis is the most highly decorated member of our faculty. His many accolades, including that he was recently inducted as a Fellow of the Royal College of Physicians. He was named an Honorary Distinguished Professor at King's College. He was awarded the Mentorship Award. He's going to sit down because the list is so long. He was awarded the Mentorship Award from the Association of Gerontology in Higher Education. And he was a French Knight previously, but he was this year elevated to the highest level of French knighthood. Kelvin, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Hussey. That's quite lovely. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. She's one of those intelligent and compassionate students that Hussey was talking about earlier. Elizabeth Rojas received her Bachelor of Science degree in Lifespan Health, and she's currently finishing up her graduate studies here at the Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. She'll graduate this spring. Elizabeth has worked with the geriatric population at various hospitals in Los Angeles. including Huntington Memorial Hospital, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, and the LA County USC Medical Center. She served as the graduate student representative for the Leonard Davis School Student Gerontology Association, the SGA, and the ambassador of the USC Caruso Catholic Center. Additionally, Elizabeth serves on the board of the Thrive and Joy Nick Fagnano Foundation. In 2018, Elizabeth was awarded membership in USC's Order of Troy. A career aspiration of Elizabeth's is to become a medical doctor and to work to ensure that the needs of the aging population are met on a national and even an international scale. Please help me in welcoming Elizabeth Rojas.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Elizabeth Rojas, and it is an honor to have been asked here today to speak to all of you about my experience in the gerontology program. I had the privilege of attending the Leonard Davis School as an undergraduate, and I've spent the last 5 years here in the classroom, outside of the classroom, learning what it means to be a gerontologist and learning what it means to study aging. I gained a love for studying gerontology when my maternal grandmother, one of the people that I credit with raising me, was diagnosed with vascular dementia. In the 12 years that she suffered from her disease, I watched as my mother and my grandfather took on these roles, these heavy roles of being primary caregivers. I watched as they worked so hard day in and day out to make sure that she was comfortable in her disease. I saw firsthand the patience and the love and the effort and determination it really takes to care for somebody aging and to care for somebody facing cognitive decline. And I decided that I wanted to make it my mission to do the same thing in my life. During the last few years of her life, I had the privilege of being heavily involved with her care, and I made sure that she was always comfortable and as happy as she could be in her illness. I remember so many days going from school to her home, making sure that I was able to help her with meals or feeding. And it was the greatest honor of my life being able to reverse those roles and care for someone who cared so deeply for me. It is the reason that I am passionate about this field, and it is why I am so excited about the advancements that our school is making. The Leonard Davis School consistently works to advance our understanding of aging in the modern times and has connections across the world, allowing students like myself to find deeper connections across the world through its programs. One of my most memorable experiences was the opportunity that I had to travel abroad to Tel Aviv, Israel with the esteemed Dr. Mathur. There, I got to explore the trauma of Holocaust survivors and learn about the emotional coping mechanisms that were used in a time of such devastation in their lives. Apart from this, I was able to bond with peers and with classmates, and I've been able to form lifelong friendships. Another key aspect of why I love this school is that I had the privilege of being part of the Student Gerontology Association. Collaborating with my peers to make programs that benefit this school community has been such a gift, and it allows students of all academic levels to bond over coffee with professors and learn from some of the world's leading experts, as well as form lifelong friendships. One feature of our school that I think makes it particularly unique is the fact that I genuinely know my professors. I know who they are on their days off. I know that some only function after 2 cups of coffee. They've become my friends, my mentors, my advisors, and they've helped me plan out the next steps along my journey. Last year, I had the opportunity to attend this very luncheon and meet the donors who so generously contributed to my passion for studying gerontology. Easily, without this scholarship, I would not be able to attend such a distinguished program and study something that I am so passionate about. The Davis School is my home away from home, and it is my safe haven on this campus. I always know I am welcome there. Your support to the Leonard Davis School allows students like me to have opportunities that simply could not happen anywhere else, and I am tremendously grateful. I'm confident that the education that I have received over the course of my time here will carry me through my future profession and help me to contribute to a field as a medical doctor. To know that students can be impacted in such a remarkable way through an act of kindness helps to assure me that students for generations to come will have experiences at the Davis School similar to my own. I know that I have been able to make a difference on and alongside other Trojans based on the opportunities that I've been given through this school. So again, I thank you so profoundly for choosing to enrich the academic lives of our Trojans, and fight on.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and thank you for sharing your personal story. I hope everyone's enjoying themselves. What do you think of it so far? Later, we'll hear from our Board of Counselors Chair, Cheri Ferrell, and also from one of our key faculty members, Professor Mathur. But first, I would invite you to sit back and enjoy your lunch, or sit forward and enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if I might have your attention, please. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, our next speaker. Professor Mathur is Professor of Gerontology in our school and Professor of Psychology in the Dornsife College. She's also an Assistant Dean of Faculty and Academic Affairs in our school. Her research is on the affective cognitive neuroscience of aging, examining how age-related changes in brain function and structure impact cognition and emotion. Mara has received the Distinguished Scientific Award for Early Career Contribution to Psychology from the American Psychological Association, a National Institutes of Health KO2 Career Development Award, and an Alexander von Humboldt Foundation Research Fellowship. Her research on emotion, cognition, interactions, and how they change in aging has been funded by a series of grants from the National Institutes of Health. Her research spans topics such as stress and decision-making, how memory and attention become more positive in aging, and how emotional arousal shapes perception and memory. She received her PhD in cognitive psychology from Princeton University and completed her undergraduate degree and postdoctoral training at Stanford University. Please join me in welcoming Professor Mathur.
Thanks so much, and thanks so much for all of you for being here. I want to say that I feel like I'm just about one of the luckiest people on earth to have this most amazing job. I get to wake up every morning and think about problems and learn new things and have articles come into my inbox that are fascinating and try to understand them and try to figure out how the mind works. And in particular, I'm interested in emotion and cognition and how they interact in the brain and how this changes in aging. So I can tell you one really surprising thing that we found, my colleagues and I, about, I guess it would be about around 18 years ago, we found that as people get older, they tend to focus more on positive and ignore negative information. And at first, people thought this was probably associated with brain-related decline, but we found that it was actually older adults who showed cognitive function most like younger adults, so the most executive function, the most prefrontal function, who were showing this effect the most. And it seems to be especially related to people's sense of time left in life. As people feel that time is more limited, they focus more on emotionally meaningful goals and less on the future and trying to learn new things. So the focus is here on the present and now, and it really is about maximizing and optimizing emotion. So these sort of things are really fascinating. I think the intersection of emotion and cognition is one of the most interesting things, and I feel very lucky to be able to look at this and to have people like you that support this, as well as our broader society. We are the envy of the world, and hopefully this will maintain this way, that we have a system like the National Institutes of Health. It's one of our great national treasures, and it really makes so much of our advances in health and understanding possible. And I've been very fortunate to be supported by them for many years. And I today want to thank Navigage Foundation for their gift to my research and tell you a little bit about what I'm working on right now and how It's still in progress, and I'm very excited about it. But whatever I tell you about it might change because we won't have our results for about another year because this is a very big study. What we're doing is we're looking into the effects of heart rate variability, biofeedback on the emotion regulation circuitry in the brain. So what does this mean? What am I talking about? Well, your heart, if it was left on its own, would beat very steadily. And this is what we think a good heart should do. It should have a steady beat, right? But it turns out that your brain sends signals to the heart that create variability, and in particular, they create oscillations in your heart rate. And so anyone who's a cardiologist know that if they're measuring an EKG and someone has a very steady heartbeat, that's a really bad sign. What you want is a heart rate that has natural oscillations in it. And there are two main signals that create these oscillations. One is your breathing. Turns out as you breathe in, your heart rate tends to speed up, and as you breathe out, it slows down. So you always have this oscillation in your heart rate, and usually we breathe about 3 to 4 seconds per breath. The other main influence on our heart rate is more fixed, and that's our blood pressure feedback system, the baroreflex. And that turns out to have about a 10-second oscillation because there are mechanical receptors on vessels that detect when the vessels are stretched, and then they send a message through the brain back to the heart to say, slow down, there's too much blood. But that takes about 5 seconds, and that leads to a 10-second oscillation where it's always overcorrecting, like an air conditioner that gets too cold and too hot because it's not getting the signal immediately. So we have these two things that are creating oscillations, and we know from many hundreds of studies in the literature that people who, when you just sit them down at rest and you measure their heart beats, if they have more variability in their heartbeats, they tend to be younger, fitter, less depressed, less anxious, generally in better health. And this has been looked at in a lot of psychological research because it relates so much to depression and anxiety, this heart rate variability. What we were finding in our research is that it also relates to brain structure. So people with higher heart rate variability have greater thickness in prefrontal regions that are associated with controlling this system. And they also have greater functional connectivity, greater relationship between brain regions that are associated with emotion regulation. So prefrontal brain regions that help regulate the amygdala. And so I started wondering, what's the relationship here? Is this just a correlation? Is there any causation in this relationship? In order to understand this, we have to be able to manipulate something to understand what's causing what. And I thought, we would like to manipulate heart rate variability, but this sounds kind of outlandish. How can you possibly manipulate someone's heart rate variability without causing lots of problems? It turns out people have started doing this with really great effects. So the way that people do this is that they ask people to breathe to a metronome to slow down their breathing. So they, instead of breathing every 3 to 4 seconds, they might breathe every 10 seconds. Breathe in for 5 and out for 5. And you can hook people up with a little sensor on their ear that measures their pulse, and they get feedback about their heart rate. And if they start doing this, breathing to this metronome and thinking actually happy and relaxed thoughts, which is also interestingly an important part of this, they end up with a very smooth oscillation in their heart rate, perhaps maybe 50 beats to 70 beats, up and down during that 10-second over and over again. Whereas usually, your heart rate is sort of messy. There's variability if you're healthy, but it's not this very smooth oscillating thing. And the reason is because what you're doing is you're slowing down your breathing, which is one input, slowing it down to the same frequency as this baroreflex, the blood pressure feedback system. And because the system's now getting 2 inputs at the same frequency, it leads to resonance, which is very high amplitude perturbations. Now, the fascinating thing is that if people do this for 20 minutes a day for 5 weeks, they end up, it's been done in a number of studies, it turns out with a large effect size that people are less anxious. And it also seems to reduce depression. So this is just really surprising and striking, and it's a manipulation. People are changing heart rate variability. So we are doing the first study to try to understand the mechanisms of this. We're scanning people in a functional magnetic resonance image scanner before and after they do 5 weeks of this intervention. And we have a very careful control condition that matches all of the biofeedback aspects, but people are trying to reduce their heart rate variability during that 20 minutes. And we got funding from the NIH to run this study, and there'll be 208 people, half of them older, half younger, who do this manipulation. We're about a quarter of the way through the study, and because of additional funds that we got from Navigage, we've been able to add really exciting, very exploratory measures to this study, which right now, from the preliminary results, look like they might be the most exciting findings in this study. So we have 2 measures that were not funded by NIH that are really, I think, very important that we've added. One is magnetic resonance spectroscopy, which is measuring the brain's neurochemical state. And what we're seeing in our preliminary data, very preliminary findings right now, but we're seeing that it looks like already significant effects, that the people who do this biofeedback for 5 weeks show less glutamate and less other indications of just general brain excitation. So it seems that the brain somehow is calmer. We're also collecting blood, and we're going to be doing gene expression studies. So we'll be able to see how just your biological state is shifting with this. And what I think is really important about this work is that this is a state that people get into naturally in many meditative practices. But there's been very little attention paid to it in trying to understand how meditation works. It might very well be that this oscillating state is a key part of why meditation has such positive impact. And so I'm really grateful for the support that Navigage Foundation and others have given to my research and other people in the School of Gerontology, their research. I want to tell you I have been at the School of Gerontology for 11 years. And I was in a department of psychology before, and I had some, concerns about it's going to be really different being in a multidisciplinary school. And it has been, and it's really terrific. The ability to be able to think about questions more broadly, it really opens those dialogues. USC is an incredibly dynamic place and very, very collaborative. I was at another university where I never met anyone outside my department until my 7th year when I was on a campus committee. Literally never met anyone, any other faculty members. And I got here, and within the first month, there was a conference on the emotion in the brain, and there were about 30 faculty members from USC speaking at this conference in my research area from all different schools and departments across campus. And so it's been this amazing experience being here in the School of Gerontology and at USC. And thank you all so much for what you've done to help support this endeavor and make life so exciting and fruitful for those of us in the school. Thank you.
So I think you can all see how lucky we are to have Mara as part of our faculty. Thank you, Mara. Cheri Ferrell founded ST Enterprises, a management consulting firm specializing in strategic planning, campaign readiness studies, development audits, and fund development campaigns for a wide variety of nonprofit organizations, in addition to providing strategic planning services to agribusiness companies. Prior to establishing her own firm in 1992, Cheri spent more than 25 years here at USC, where she served in a variety of development and public relations positions. A magna cum laude graduate of USC, she's also studied at the University of Hawaii and at Cambridge University in England. While at USC, she held leadership positions in both annual development areas and major fund development, and established the University Events Office. Cheri is a longtime member of the Trojan family and of the Leonard Davis School, and in fact, she's the chair of our Board of Counselors, a member of Phi Beta Kappa, Phi Kappa Phi, and many other clubs and support organizations. Please help me in welcoming Cheri Ferrell to the podium.
You know, ever since I was a little girl, I loved it when somebody would tell me a story. So I'm going to tell you a story. And it's a story about my love affair with the Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. And it's about my journey of coming from working there to being a benefactor. It all started in 1974, and for you students, I know that was long before you were born. But I was hired from another position at the university to produce the international dedication of the first school of gerontology in the world, the Leonard Davis School, which remains that way, by the way. It was a year of planning, and during that year, I had this wonderful opportunity to get to know the dean and the faculty and our researchers and to learn about gerontology. And oh my gosh, I was smitten. So I was so fortunate that after the end of the dedication, I was hired to head the development and public relations efforts for the Leonard Davis School. And I thought, oh, I really want to succeed at this. What should I do immediately? In the first 3 months, what should I do? And I thought, it's really important for me to be able to understand what's going on in the laboratories and with our researchers so that I can be articulate with others who might be interested in investing in gerontology. So a lot of that time in those first 3 months, that's exactly what I did. And that feeling of excitement and exhilaration deepened even more. But at the end of those 3 weeks, my husband got a telephone call. He called me and he said, "We've been transferred to Honolulu." To be honest, I was devastated. I could hardly talk. And I said, "Is there any other option?" And he said, "It doesn't look like it." And at the time, the chairman of our board, Justin Dart, this is the board of trustees at the university, unbeknown to me, called the senior partner of my husband's company in New York and said, "You can't transfer her." Well, of course, the senior partner called my husband, who called me, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to ruin my husband's career. I can't do this. So I said, "Isn't there any other way? What if I commute?" And the university said, "Okay." So for more than 2 years, I commuted the 9 hours from Waialaiki to campus. And during that time, I had some really interesting things that happened. One in particular I remember because it was Honolulu, LA, New York. Now, why New York? Because I was meeting with a number of corporate executives. We were building the Business Institute in Gerontology, and that was a support organization for corporations. So I was there to introduce gerontology to them. My first appointment was with Xerox in their New York office. Had a delightful discussion, but to be honest, I was a little disappointed that at the end of the discussion, he hadn't made a commitment to join. He said, "I find this very interesting, but I need to talk it over with others." So just as I was leaving, he said, "Oh, by the way, we have a corporate table at a function this evening. Would you be willing to join us?" And I thought, an opportunity to maybe close the deal. So I said, "Oh, that would be great." And just as I started out the door, I said, "Might this be black tie?" And he said, "Oh, yes, it's black tie." So between my appointments, I would dash to Saks, got a dress. Next time I had a chance, dash to Saks, get shoes. Next time, get a purse. Didn't have time to get a jacket, even though it was in November. And for Hawaii, it was very chilly. So I arrived that evening. I was escorted to my place at their table. And who should I be seated next to but David Rockefeller? And I must say it was one of the most fascinating evenings of my life. And the next morning, before I left for my first appointment, I got a call from Xerox saying, "Mr. Rockefeller thinks it would be a great idea if we join the Business Institute." So then there was another really interesting thing because the Leonard Davis School was a beacon to countries all around the world, and we had so many international visitors who came. And this time in particular was a delegation from Bolivia. And that really surprised me because at that time, Bolivia was governed by a communist general dictator, literally. So I thought it was interesting that they really even were sensitive to issues of older adults. So they arrived, and we met in the dean's office, and there was discussion about what we do, and they were particularly interested in how we were founded, and that an individual, Leonard Davis, would give his personal millions to create the school. And there was no culture of philanthropy in that country whatsoever. So it was quite an amazing story for them. So we took them on a tour of the laboratories in the second floor, and on the second floor, who should we run into? Leonard Davis. He was visiting. So the dean made the introductions, and the general was totally silent. He barely moved. And then he bowed, and he said, "Le beso a sus pies," which means, "I kiss your feet." That is the highest possible compliment you could ever give anybody. And the expressions on the faces of the other delegates who had never seen the general give any kind of accolade like that, it was really memorable. But there was one other thing about gerontology in the 70s. Nobody knew the word. They couldn't pronounce it and they couldn't spell it. So it took a lot of extra educating, and I remember the dean and I, it was probably 1976, and we said, by 1980, gerontology will be a household word. Well, it didn't quite work out like that. And in fact, about a year ago, I was at a community event. We live in Pasadena, and I was getting to know somebody, and he said, "Well, what do you do that's interesting and fun?" I said, "Well, I'm very engaged in the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology." He said, "Really? I had no idea that USC had a school of gemology." So, but because of my enthusiasm for gerontology, my absolute love for everything that went on there, that enthusiasm spilled over into my family. And my parents got really involved, and my brother got involved. They both joined our annual support organization, and then my dad was appointed to the board. And about 30 years before I was appointed chairman of the board, my dad served as chairman of the board. And my brother was head of Andrus Associates, which was our annual support organization. So it became a family endeavor. And my mom and dad particularly liked to help people just as they were starting their careers. So they created an endowment, which today is used to award a scholarship, not a scholarship, it's an award to help a junior faculty member take an idea and flesh it out so that it can go the next thing and get millions of dollars in funding from NIH and NIA. And Mara is one of our recipients a few years ago. And my husband and I thought that was such a great idea that now we also give an award, a faculty award for a junior faculty as they're really starting their careers. So it was a journey. Now our third generation, our sons and daughters-in-law, we have two sons, and they exchange every year sitting on the selection committee to make those faculty awards. They beg to come to our annual retreats, and they're there every year and love it. And in fact, one of my darling daughters-in-law said to me, when I wanted to be sure that they were coming, not just because I was chairman, but they really wanted to come, and she put her arm around me and she said, "You know, to be honest, I think we get more out of it than you do." and it's because they have a longer lifespan. So they're learning a lot. And again, now we're 3 generations into the Leonard Davis School, and my excitement and enthusiasm, and I heard Elizabeth, it was such a wonderful, articulate presentation, and every student I have ever met who has been in gerontology is passionate about it. And that pleases me because of my own passion as well. So some of you might not know about Ethel Percy Andrus. As you know, the school is located in the Ethel Percy Andrus Gerontology Center. She was a teacher and then a principal of LA High. And she retired at 65, and guess what? Her health insurance was canceled. Well, this really angered her. And she thought, I know I'm not a voice in the wilderness. I have a lot of teacher friends who now are in the same spot I am. So she went about and created the California Retired Teachers Association, which very soon thereafter became the National Retired Teachers Association. Now there are thousands of retired teachers without health insurance. But that was a base that she then took to insurance companies and said, please underwrite this group of people for their health insurance. She got a lot of no. But she took it to one company, Colonial Penn Group, Inc., whose president happened to be Leonard Davis. And he said, I will underwrite you for 1 year, and then we'll decide whether to continue. Well, several things happened. Number one, the teachers got their health insurance. Number two, Leonard Davis became a multimillionaire and then contributed back to create the school. And number three, the National Retired Teachers Association became AARP, the largest membership organization in the world, 38 million members. So that was quite a history. So now you know when you go to the Ethel Percy Andrus Gerontology Center, the background. And she was so interesting because she lived during the Depression. It made an indelible impression on her. And I remember her, I read this, she was gone by the time she had died before I was with the gerontology school. And she said something that I've never forgotten, which was, what I've earned is gone. What I saved is lost. But what I gave away is mine forever. And my hope for all of you students in this room is that some years from now, things will be reversed. And you will be seated here as a benefactor, supporting all of those wonderful students and faculty at the gerontology school. Thank you very much.
Cheri, thank you. On behalf of the Leonard Davis School, thank you so much. Thank you, Cheri. Your support is really appreciated, and the Leonard Davis School is very lucky to have you as part of our family and our leadership. Many of you may not know, but next week, actually, Cheri is going to be honored further by becoming a half-century Trojans Hall of Fame member. So congratulations to Cheri. We thank you all for being with us today. We hope you've had interesting conversations and found new people, new friends, new ways to support the school. And we hope that you've had a good time. This is not the end. Please don't get up and run away. Enjoy your coffee, enjoy your tea, and enjoy more conversation. But it's the end of our formal program. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you.